on. As an optometrist, I am a healthcare provider on the front line of primary care, and had worked on the State Government Relations Executive Board of the American Optometric Association, and we fought hard to make sure that the Affordable Care Act also included something called the Harkin Amendment. And in that, it would allow then for a patient to actually choose the type of doctor that they would see if it was somebody outside of the medical, as a medical provider. So for example, a chiropractor, a physical therapist, and so on. So that was not included originally in the Affordable Care Act. I worked on that, and we continue to defend accessible, affordable health care for all, and that's always been my passion.
Thank you. Okay, the next one, it'll be Dr. Ong's turn first. Pension reform is an issue the public seems to have an opinion on. How do you think the legislature should work on it?
At this particular time, I've mentioned to you already that it was my parents' union jobs that were made it possible for us to actually finish college, all 4 children. And my mom sold hot dogs at the Coliseum. My dad was a grocer at Lucky's. And so these are not the type of jobs nowadays that we can feel will actually allow the kind of opportunities that my family has had. I feel very strongly about pensions and retaining that, because if we don't continue to allow for that, we pay for it some other way, indirectly, in emergency room visits. Really, the biggest problem, again, is health care. Most of that expense in our pension is really health care. And so once we start to handle that, it's all interrelated. So we have to focus first on repairing that part of the system of pension. When they have studied in other states defined contribution plans and defined benefit plans, they always find that it's about anywhere from 5 to 7% higher return on investment when you go with a defined benefit plan. And so that will be something I'll continue to support.
Thank you. Mr. Quirk?
During my time on the City Council in Hayward, we were faced directly with this question. In 2000 or so, when they changed all the pensions and increased them, the city didn't have to contribute anything to pensions. We were expecting in the long run to do something like 8 or 9% of salary. Today, for a police officer, it's about 40% of salary. For a firefighter, it's about 35% of salary. That's why the cities are in financial problems right now. Now, as a member of the City Council, I stood firm with the rest of my council during a time when most of them were running for re-election. The majority were running for re-election, and I was running for election, and said to our bargaining units, look, do you want to save jobs? If you do, we need to get some concessions. Our bargaining units, police, fire, road workers, waterworks workers, all agreed to concessions of about 15% of compensation. They're heroes. They have saved jobs, meaning that they have saved the people of Hayward. And we need to do the same thing at a state level. We need to level with our employees and say, what is it we need to do to move forward, to keep jobs and to keep services? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will direct to Mr. Quirk first. What will you do to support services to seniors in District 20?
We have a number of programs for seniors, some of which actually save money, such as daycare for seniors. We have daycare for seniors who are getting into dementia, so that their working sons and daughters and nieces and nephews and other caretakers can still maintain jobs while the seniors are being taken care of at a daycare center, much like you'd have daycare for kids. They have programs for them. This is a great thing. That program was cut. I think that was penny wise but pound foolish yeah, you save some money on that, but now you're going to have to pay for people to go into nursing homes, or you're going to pay to have care in their homes. It's going to be more expensive. So I think the best care is the care that's done at home, and we have to look at inexpensive programs like adult daycare, like Meals on Wheels, that allow seniors to stay in their homes. And cutting those programs, again, it's penny wise, pound foolish. We have to support those programs. We have to reverse those cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ong?
I do look at seniors as a range of different types of seniors, right? We have a lot of active seniors who actually even want to go back into the workplace. So last week, I actually coordinated with our community groups and put together a job resources fair that specifically served our underserved populations. And so we handheld every single one of the 170 plus job seekers, and they were from the previously incarcerated, seniors, the disabled population, our single parents, and English language learners. It's important that when a senior is still active and would like to be a part of the community in other ways, that we have the necessary services available to them. And that does include also, if they'd like to continue to work, access to jobs. The other piece about, of course, seniors is, and we'll all get there, unfortunately, is, again, the healthcare access. And so we promised that we would have these golden years for our seniors. So providing all sorts of access, again, to programs that provide dignity in their quality of life is important. And to me, again, I'll bring it back to healthcare. I've been doing years of health fair screenings for the seniors and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, we'll go to Dr. Ong first. Let's see, Mr. Quirk mentioned what his position is on Proposition 30, and this question asked for each of you to state your position, and what specifically will you do to support education K through 12, community colleges, and higher education?
Right. One of my history in the last 25 years is actually working with the most underserved in our populations, and these are through churches, community groups. These are the poorest in District 20. These are families who supplement their families with food from the food banks. And so because of that, they have actually approached me and our family-owned small business owners and asked that Prop 30 is actually going to be a hardship for them. So it's with much difficulty that I have to choose between, just like they do, feeding their family and choosing the access to education. We've forgotten that we have, and this is of course public knowledge, $10 billion of unpaid, uncollected taxes according to the California Franchise Tax Board. I've been a small business owner for the last 13 years. And the last time I looked, you don't go around raising your prices because you're having problems paying your expenses. You have to keep collecting who hasn't paid yet. So we need to make sure that those resources, people must pay their fair share. We have folks there who live in Beverly Hills that own thousands, 10,000, 10 million even of uncollected taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Quirk?
Well, if the state knew how to collect those $8 or $10 billion, they'd be doing it today. And certainly we should put whatever resources we can into doing that. But right now we have a decision, and that's Proposition 30. It's extremely progressive. There is a 0.25% sales tax that everyone would pay. That's 25 cents on $100. The only people who would pay more than that are single people earning more than $250,000 a year. On their income above $250,000, they would pay 1% or so more. And then the half-millionaire families, people earning more than $500,000 a year, would pay on their income above $500,000, 1% or so more. I think that's the most progressive tax you can have, and I really don't understand my opponent's position on that. Beyond that, we have to look at educational policy. Most of you were here, probably all of you were here for the school board. I think we have to maintain local control. I think we have to reform No Child Left Behind. It has led to too much testing and not enough teaching of ways to think. I don't know any teachers who support that program. There's some good aspects to it in that it does demand that certain things are taught in the schools, and that's fine. But we need to reform that, and that needs to be something we do in the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. See, the next question goes to Mr. Quirk first. Some people think that CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, makes it too difficult for the business community. What are your thoughts about this?
CEQA itself, I don't think is a problem. We, again, on the City Council, they end up, as developers, bringing in a new project with a list of things. And they have to say, here's where the impacts are, here's where there are no impacts, here's where there's an impact and we can ameliorate it, here's where there is an impact and we can't. Sometimes studies have to be done on things like sensitive species, burrowing owls, etc. It's a great tool. What happens is when that tool gets misused, and people who are opposed to the project for reasons other than having an adequate CEQA report sue over it not being adequate. We have to change the way that that law is enforced in the courts. We lost a wonderful development up in Marin because people sued over the expansion of Industrial Light and Magic. People who were there after George Lucas has brought his company there. That has to stop. We have to stop it in the legislature. That's a tough process because there can be legitimate suits as well. We don't want to stop those. It's not going to be easy. I will be working with my supporter, Assemblymember Wajkowski, who's head of the Judiciary Committee, to work on that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ong?
Unfortunately, we can have legislators who know what the right thing is to do and won't necessarily follow through with that. So when I mentioned earlier about ways that we can gather up more resources, there are so many ways that our legislators know we can gather resources, and they're not actually following through, right? So as a community, that's our responsibility too. So I'll share that with you first. What's our other responsibility? The future of our community, right? Our children. They have to live with any waste that we contribute to promoting or allowing to happen. So CEQA was there because it was necessary. Because unfortunately, when companies or humans can make the most profit out of anything, then they will. And so there has to be the regulations there to help guide them through it. Yes, with any kind of rules and regulations, sometimes there's always streamlining that can be done. Other than that, the premise works. It's necessary. We have generations of young people who are relying on us to look after this country, this land. We have a beautiful state. We need to maintain it.
Thank you. We're running out of time, and my goodness, we have some wonderful questions here. So I think I'm just going to have to choose one. Have you? Do you? Yeah. Are you willing to stay a little longer? Sure.
I am, sure.
Okay.
You'll lose if you'll turn out the lights.
What time?
When do we have to turn out the lights?
All right.
There, well, then let's just go with a couple more here then. So let's see. It's Dr. Ong's turn first this time. What would you do to support California's future water needs?
The one thing that I do understand and have lived through, having come from an developing country, the Philippines, is that conservation has to be really key. You know this. Our country, unfortunately, our culture has not really grown to the idea of naturally conserving our resources. We have such beautiful resources here. I don't want it to turn into what we left we're still fighting, trying to keep our waters clean and trying to have drinkable water. We actually have it here in California. So I've been active in actually educating our students in Hayward